all the latest on the SaWGuy podcast, be sure to subscribe and don't forget that bell icon.
Attention boys and ghouls, it's time for SaWGuy Podcast.
Welcome to the SaWGuy podcast. As always, y'all know I am the SaWGuy, and today is special. It's one of my favorite holidays of all time, Halloween. And you know what makes it even much better is that I'm going to celebrate it with you guys for episode 53, Rob Zombie's classic, House of a Thousand Corpses. So without further ado, let's get this Halloween shit rolling.
Hello, and welcome to the SaWGuy Podcast.
I ain't no fucking clown.
That is better.
You gotta clear your minds. He knows what scares you.
I'm just gonna bash your brains.
What the hell? The boogeyman is real, and you found him. What do you want?
I want to hear you scream.
Hell. Everybody loves popcorn.
Rob Zombie's House of a Thousand Corpses will always be a cult favorite because it gave us so many, iconic scenes of this. It's so Rob Zombie-like. It was very, I guess you could say, if you've seen this film, if you've never seen it, check it out, because it's kind of a oddball, weird mix in there, because it reminded me of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Motel Hell, and it had a little bit of the Manson tapes into it. There was a lot of cutaway scenes where, it would show something happen, then it'd show a cutaway scene, and it almost reminded me of the Manson tapes, which is really weird. But, it's Rob Zombie. Rob Zombie, he knocked it out of the park with this, and this film actually almost didn't happen. Long story short, I'll give you a quick backstory of how this film came about. Back in 1999 and 2000, Rob Zombie, he decided to work with Universal Studios in Hollywood, and they were going to develop a haunted house / haunted maze, right? And Rob Zombie started designing it. They gave him full control to do whatever that he wanted, right? And when he decided to build it, then that's when he thought, shit, I can make a film out of this. And, he presented that to Universal, and they said, okay, let's do this, right? So, he designed the whole maze in the haunted house, and he was going to call it House of a Thousand Corpses, but then he took that title and used it for the movie instead, so the house was changed to American Nightmare. While you waited to get in there, they had TV screens all around that showed the trailer of House of a Thousand Corpses. And, it was pretty interesting because they filmed this back in 2000. And then the film didn't get released until 2003, so everyone's thinking like, hey, what the fuck? Why did it take 3 years? Well, after Rob Zombie filmed it, they gave him like a bare bone budget. I think they gave him, it's rumored between anywhere from $4 million to $7 million, right? So they gave him that amount of budget to, film this whole movie. And, when Rob Zombie presented it to them, it wasn't finished. And he kept making extra scenes where he did like one with blood and guts and one with no blood and guts. And he did that purposely to see what he can get away with. Well, Universal was just like, okay, we're going to get a bad rap on this. We're going to show it. So, 2 years goes by, Rob Zombie buys it. He tries to sell it to MGM. The deal goes through, but then MGM kind of backs out. There's a bunch of different rumors going on with that. And finally, Lionsgate Film, they bought this film and then they released it actually in April of 2003. So, this film, it took a long time to, get out there to the public. But I'm glad it did because, there's a lot of cult favorite things in this film. Captain Spaulding, right off the bat, I'm from good old Fresno, as you can tell. And Captain Spaulding, said, hey, he's kind of like a local legend over here, a local hero. And so it's pretty cool, how they, developed all these different characters. You have his wife who played in this film, Sherry Moon Zombie. She played baby Firefly in this, right? And, this is where you start seeing the Texas Chainsaw Massacre wink to this, because now you have Bill Moseley, who plays the character of Otis, Firefly. And, Bill Moseley, he was in Texas Chainsaw Massacre too. So I'm thinking, oh shit, so I'm kind of seeing a little bit of similarities here with this, and I saw that way back in the day. But this film was really cool because towards what Rob Zombie was going for, he got a lot of these really great actors that were, either in the twilight of their career or towards the end of their career. And, he put them all together in this film, and, he knocked it out of the park. He really did. And it was something different, something unique. I know a lot of people are going to say, well, it's kind of like Texas Chainsaw, and it is in a way. But then later on, when this film, became a success for Lionsgate Films, then they said, okay, you're going to have to switch up the tone for it. And then eventually he did with Devil's Rejects, right? But anyways, with House of a Thousand Corpses, I'll break down the whole story for you and throw in a little bit more tidbits, because this is an interesting film. You know, for Rob Zombie's first film, I mean, a lot of styles that he did, you know, he still does in some of his films, and other parts, you know, that you see in this film, he really doesn't do it much anymore. Rob Zombie just came out and said that, you know, this is one of those films that he was just like, yeah, I did it, but it's not my best of work, and, you know, I always tell everybody, you never forget your first. You know, but anyways, with House of a Thousand Corpses, it takes place in October 30th of 1977 in Ruggsville, right? Ruggsville County, which, you know, it's the same county that follows, you know, Devil's Rejects. But anyways, this film starts off, you know, with like an old school Halloween commercial, right? And you see Dr. Wolfenstein. And, you know, he's basically, you know, like a horror hostess, you know. He's going to show, like, horror movies. He's hosting it. It's kind of like a TV show. Back in the day, they used to do stuff like that. And then it shows a commercial for Captain Spaulding, you know, played by Sid Haig. And, you know, it's it's classic Sid Haig. I mean, they just let him have free creative control, and he went wild with this character, right? And then eventually it shows the gas station, and it shows his Monsters of Museums and Madmen, right? And as it shows it, you know, he's sitting there, and he's talking to his buddy named Stucky. They had some dialogue about some funny shit about, you know, Stucky, he's trying to sell this autograph, and he can't sell it because it's got his name all over on it. And then he's like, well, I'll sell it to this guy. And Captain Spaulding's like, what, that idiot? You know, and he's like, well, you would understand him. And then he tells him a story about how he got a Planet of the Apes Dr. Zayas skull stuck up his ass. So, you know, it was some dark humor in this as well. That's where I see the Motel Hell kind of humor into this. Because Motel Hell, even though it was a horror film, it had a lot of dark humor in this, you know? And same thing with this film. And so anyways, you know, he's like, okay, well, I gotta go use the toilet. And so Captain Spaulding, he's like, all right, just don't bust that damn thing and don't stuff no damn paper towels. I had to snake the shit out of that thing. Bust that crap or I'm busting your ass. Then it shows these two robbers, you know, they're running in, and it shows the camera like it's running it all the way in. So these two robbers come in and they try to rob Captain Spaulding. And they know that Stucky, he's inside the bathroom. So he's like, okay, get that other asshole out of the shit. This is all in the first 5 minutes of the film. And it's it's very dark humor because, you know, that's when the robber, you know, he was trying to basically tell, you know, Captain Spaulding, hey, give me all the cash out of the register. And Captain Spaulding, you know, he's fighting back. He's like, well, tell you what, I should come out over this counter and bust your fucking balls in. And Captain Spaulding's trying to spare him, so he basically says, I'll tell you what, Ski King, why don't you take home your mama some chicken so I don't have to stuff my boot all up in your ass? Then the guy responds that he's basically like, you know, I hate chicken and I hate clowns. You know, and Captain Spaulding, he's all about clowns, you know, because the Mad Monster Museum, most of it is all clowns and shit, right? So Stucky comes out with the other guy. The other guy kind of seems like he's a doofus. And so, you know, the gunman, he's telling him, hey, put that shit down. What are you doing? You know, he shoots up in the air and he's like, that is it. You're going to give me all the cash or I'm going to splatter your brains all over. And he's, you know, as he starts counting, with each number, you know, Captain Spaulding, you know, he comes back with a response. 1, fuck your mama. 2, fuck your sister. 3, fuck your grandma. You know, and eventually that's when Stucky, he recognizes them that they're the two, you know, people that work at the hardware store. You know, and he starts messing with the doofus guy, and then he takes off his mask. And he's like, put your fucking mask back on. Then he drops it. You know, and then Captain Spaulding starts laughing. Then he's like, fuck it. And he's getting ready to shoot. And then Captain Spaulding's, you know, assistant or, you know, his co-worker, you know, one of the guys that works with him, you know, he breaks down the door wearing this big-ass mask, and he hits the guy with an axe. And, you know, Captain Spaulding pulls out this old-school Colt revolver, kills the dumb guy, and then all of a sudden, you know, he's laughing. And then, you know, that's when he steps on the guy and he goes, most of all, fuck you. And he shoots him a couple of times. But then he says the dialogue, goddamn, motherfucker got blood all over my best clown suit. And then that's when it starts, where it says, Rob Zombie film. You know, for the intro, I was just like, holy shit. Like that, you know, Rob Zombie knew how to hook you right there. You know, he threw in some dark humor, but then he also kind of, you know, brought it back to the horror roots aspect. You know, kind of make it gory a little bit and intense. That's basically what he was doing. And throughout the whole credits, it shows how, you know, they're doing like a, I guess you could say like a cadaver thing where they're like going through and like stripping, you know, skinning people and shit like that. Then it shows like the house. There's a lot of cutaway scenes, you know. It kind of reminds you of the Manson tapes. Now the story ends up changing where it's still the same night, but now it follows, you know, these two young couples. They're driving down on the road in their Ruggsville. And one of them is actually Chris Hardwick. Chris Hardwick, he plays a character in here named Jerry. And the other reason why I know Chris Hardwick is because, you know, he does the TV show about, you know, Walking Dead, Talking Dead, you know, 1-800-DEAD-LIVE, you know. That guy, yeah, he actually did movies. And then you also have Rainn Wilson from The Office. This is one of his first acting roles in this, you know. They're like best friends, you know, they're going out cross country to see all of this weird shit that you see on the roads and stuff like that, and they brought their girlfriends. So as they're driving, you know, they're looking down, they're all like, fuck, there's no gas! And he's all telling, you know, Chris Hardwick's character, Jerry, he's like, how much money did you put in the gas, you know? He's like, about $2-3. He's like, $2-3? You know, and it was funny because at the time, $2-3, I mean, it still ain't shit in gas, you know, because, I mean, those old school cars, I mean, they're fucking tanks, you know, so you put $3 of gas, that ain't gonna get you shit, right? So that's when he's like, well, you don't have to worry about it. There's a stop sign, you know, Captain Spaulding's Monsters of Man Museum, chicken and gas, so we'll make it, right? So they get there, they pull in, he starts gassing up, and he's like, all right, well, go in there and see what you think, you know, if we should bust out the camera and record everything. You know, so, Jerry goes in, and like 2 seconds later he comes out. He's like, holy shit, this is so badass! And what I love about that character is that is basically the epitome of every horror fan. I'm basically like that horror fan. If I go anywhere somewhere cool and I walk out, I do the same shit, you know? Holy shit, that was all badass! Some of you guys see my reactions, you know, whether it's a trailer movie or anything, I totally fanboy out, right? So anyways, he's like, all right, well, wake up the girls and let's go in there and start filming, you know. So they start waking up the girls and everything, you know, their girlfriends, and they got them in there. And basically when they got them in there, they're kind of all looking around and everything. And then they start asking, you know, Captain Spaulding questions like, how long have you been doing this and this and this and that. And this is right after the incident, after he shot the guy. So, you know, he cleaned it all up. So he's not all dressed up. He's wearing just a regular old t-shirt and his clown, you know, pants, right? So he's asking him, well, why are you asking so many jackassy questions? He's like, well, you know, because we write about, like, cross-country and the shit that you see and blah, 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 blah. And then eventually, you know, it shows that they go on the murder ride, right? You know, the girlfriends are all like, hey, come on, let's go. You know, and they're like, for what? Well, we paid the tickets to go to the murder ride. Well, I don't want to go on the murder ride. You know, they start fucking with each other. Then finally, Captain Spaulding's like, come on, the tour awaits. So that's when they start riding this murder ride. And basically what the murder ride is that it's his assistant, Ravelli. He's pushing this cart where it has like 2 of them in the front, 2 of them in the back, and they go through and they see kind of like, almost like Disney's Haunted Mansion, you know, when you go through like on one of those old school dune buggies, right? And you know, you stop and see things, and then Captain Spaulding explains it, right? So they go through and they start talking about the different types of serial killers, you know. So the first one they meet is Albert Fish. Everybody knows about Albert Fish and what he does, right? Then all of a sudden, as they're driving along, you see Lizzie Borden, and you hear Jerry, you know, he's like, oh, there's fucking Lizzie Borden right there, man. And then they start talking about Ed Gein. You know, Ed Gein, and everybody knows about Ed Gein, how he started Texas Chainsaw Massacre, you know, The Silence of the Lambs, you know, that thing. So, you know, he kind of breaks down the stories about how, you know, Ed Gein, he liked to take pleasure messing with dead bodies and women's organs. And then eventually it comes into the main big character that they built up, right? Where it shows, you know, Dr. Satan, basically. It shows basically this prop where, you know, he's working on something and he stands up and his eyes light up red. And he goes, oh, this is S. Quentin Quayle, a.k.a. Dr. Satan. And, you know, he tells them about how, hey, he's the local legend here in their county. And, you know, he was a well-known doctor who was really smart that would practice on these mentally ill patients because he wanted to build a bunch of super soldiers from these patients. And, you know, he worked at the Willow Mental Institution Hospital, and they nicknamed it Weeping Willows for all the never-ending cries. Then they said that vigilante justice prevailed. They took his ass out and hung him. And, you know, that's when he starts kind of implementing, like, you know, that hanging tree is, you know, a stone throw away from where y'all asses are sitting. You know, and then he starts playing into the character, maybe he lives next to you. And then, you know, the tour ends, and then, you know, Jerry comes out, Dr. Satan! Ah! Dr. Satan! Ah! Whoosh, whoosh. Maybe he lives next door to you. You know, I start laughing my ass off at that because, you know, like I said, I'm that type of horror fan that would do that shit, right? And so, you know, his buddy, Bill, you know, he's just like, well, it was cool, but not cool. And then, you know, Jerry's girlfriend, she was like, well, I gotta go call my dad, let him know we're running late, because they're going, you know, to meet up with their dad. And, you know, Jerry's like, hey, man, that's cool. You don't have to front in front of your girl. Then it shows Jerry's girlfriend Denise talking on the payphone, talking to her dad. And what I thought was so cool is that the person playing her dad is none other than Harrison Young. And I know a lot of you guys don't remember that name, Harrison Young, but he is the guy from Saving Private Ryan. Rob Zombie, he's an old school military arms kind of guy. You know, he loves all the old school military shit. World War I, World War II, Vietnam War. I mean, you see a lot of that aspect in this, right? You'll see a lot of little winks. Kind of like Stanley Kubrick-ish, right? So anyway, she's talking to her dad, and he's like, oh, okay, don't worry, you know, you'll be fine. Just a heads up, you know, they're doing trick-or-treating, you know, today on the 30th because, you know, Halloween falls on a school night. So take your time, you know. So they said, okay. And they're all loading up in the car. Then Jerry, he starts hounding, you know, Captain Spaulding about, you know, like, hey, where's this tree? And he's like, don't worry about it. He's like, no, give me the tree, man. So, you know, he's like, all right, fine. You go down here, you make the first right, first left, down the road, make a U-turn. You can't see it, tough, you know? So now they start going on this goose hunt, and it's pouring like a son of a bitch. You know, so they're driving around in their old school car, and they're like, okay, well, let's skip it, you know? And they're like, no, we need to go see this tree for Dr. Satan, right? As they're driving along, they see Baby Firefly. And Baby is, you know, played by Sherry Moon Zombie. And she's, you know, hitchhiking. They're all like, well, we need to pick her up. You know, we can't leave her in the rain. You know, it's the 70s. At that time, they picked up anything, right? So when they went to go and pick her up, Bill's girlfriend's like, well, if you like her so much, why don't you have her sit up front next to you guys? And so, yeah, so they picked her up and let her sit in the middle. And as they're driving through down the road, you know, trying to look for the Dr. Satan tree, all of a sudden you see this big burly dude, you know, played by Robert Mukes. You know, he pulls out this old school shotgun, aims at the tire, boom, and he takes out the tire, and then they crash. So they come out, and Jerry's like, oh, poop. And he's like, well, what? He goes, well, I think we hit something. We blow out the tire. He's like, all right, cool. He goes, well, you got the spare? Did you inflate it? He's like, yeah, I did part of that. He goes, Jerry, what the hell? He's like, well, you didn't tell me to put the spare back in. So he inflated the spare, but they didn't put the spare in. So they're sitting in there, and they're kind of arguing what they're going to do. Then Baby, she comes out and says, well, you know, my brother, he has a tow truck. He can come by and pick you up. We just got to walk to my house, which is like up the road. So Bill's like, all right, it's my fault. So he goes and walks out with Baby, and they start walking up there, right? They go up to the house, and now you start seeing, you know, the Firefly house, where it's all like, you know, creepy looking. What's interesting to note about the house, or the Fireflies, and, you know, Denise's dad's house, is that they filmed it all in the backlot of Universal Studios. So a lot of the houses, I mean, you'll recognize, like the main house that they're using, that they're filming in, is from the best little whorehouse in Texas, which I thought was funny. It was a cool little wink how they did that. So they go up to the house, and, you know, Baby's like, oh, the front door's locked, so let me go through the back. And, you know, he's looking at all these dolls, because Baby said that she had these dolls. She'd rip off their heads, tack them on the wall, and put their bodies, tack them onto the other side of the wall. And, you know, as he's looking at it, they show different cutscenes and shit. And then she scares the shit out of him. They go inside. She makes some hot chocolate, and, you know, then now she's starting to flirt with him. And then you kind of start seeing, like, cutscenes of why she's flirting with him, you know? There's a cutscene where she's like, well, you gotta do what you gotta do. If you gotta kill him, you know? And so that's why I thought, oh, shit, this is really cool. So Rob Zombie, he really kind of made this animated, right? And eventually, you know, you see the tow truck guy come pick them up, who ends up being Robert Mukes, right? Robert Mukes, the actor who played him, he played the character named Rufus, or Rufus Jr., right? And well, anyways, he was the one that blew out their tires. So now you're starting to think, okay, why the hell is the tow truck guy, picking him up, right? So he picks him up, takes him back to the house. As Baby and Bill are talking, then that's when you start seeing that, you know, like, she's trying to flirt with him. She wears his glasses, and he's like, oh, they're here. And she's like, whoop-de-fucking-do. So they all get there, and they're all sitting inside the living room. Baby's just irritated, like, ugh. Then now you meet Mama Firefly, and she comes in, she goes, well, we ain't got no phone. Mama Firefly, which is pretty cool, she's played by Karen Black. And a lot of people remember Karen Black because, I mean, you know, she did all these Police Academy films and all these other films, and she's a well-known actor, and so she played the Mama. And so they start talking about, well, when is the car going to be ready? Well, we'll have Baby go ask, you know, Rufus on it, you know. And Rufus, they're all like, yeah, Rufus Jr. We call him RJ for short, right? And, you know, she starts explaining all the different characters. Now, this is where you build up all the characters, and they start talking about Tiny. And they're all like, well, does Tiny have a car or a phone or a place he could take us to? And then they start laughing. They're all like, Tiny don't even have a bicycle, darling. And they start talking about Halloween Eve and celebrating it. And they're like, no, we're just too old, right? Bill's girlfriend, and like they had kind of like this attitude where they were just irritated. You know, being on the road and driving, yeah, you get pissed off, right? So anyways, she's like, even though you think it's childish, we're gonna celebrate it, right? And it shows that they're sitting down at the table. Jerry, he's wearing a mask and kind of fucking with it. And, you know, Bill, he's just like, just entertain them so we can finish this shit and we can go, right? And so as they're sitting there, now you start seeing like all the other different characters. You meet the other character, Otis, played by Bill Moseley. And interesting enough, he played 2 parts in this film. He played like the news reporter talking about how there was missing cheerleaders. And you really don't recognize it because he puts on a mustache and everything, and he keeps looking down like he's looking at a paper. But then he also plays the character of Otis. And, you know, it shows Otis where he's upstairs and he's talking to all these missing cheerleaders that they kidnapped. You know, and as he's doing that, you know, they're playing the Ramones. I just want to sniff some blue. And it shows that he's like torturing them and everything, right? As they're sitting there at the table, then all of a sudden it shows Tiny walking in. And Tiny's this big ass dude, played by Matthew McGorry, right? He, you know, reprised his role in Devil's Rejects for a little bit, but, you know, it shows his role. He comes in, and then Mama Firefly, she starts talking about the story, what happened to Tiny, and how, you know, Tiny's dad, he basically thought the house was haunted, and so, you know, he tried to burn it down, and when he started the fire, Tiny was sleeping inside the basement, and Tiny got all burned up and everything. That's why he looks the way he looks, and he wears a mask, because he's kind of embarrassed to show his face in front of new people. Then you meet Grandpa Hugo, played by Dennis Fimple. You know, he plays the grandpa, so it's Mama Firefly's dad, right? And, you know, he's the grandpa, so he comes in. And then so they're all dialoguing and talking. And then all of a sudden, finally, Otis comes down. And, you know, he comes down with, like, a little jar baby. And then Mama Firefly is like, you know, hey, you brought him down, oh my God, you know, we're going to celebrate Halloween. You know, it's kind of like their Christmas almost. And they're just sitting there. And then that's when Jerry starts asking about the legend of Dr. Satan. You know, and then, you know, Grandpa Hugo, he's like, so what are you, Jimmy Olsen, the daily reporter of the asshole? You know, there's a little bit of dark humor with that going on. And then Otis, he's like, boy, I bet you could stick your head in the fire if I tell you can see hell through it. Meanwhile, you got a demon screaming out of your ass saying, holy Miss Molly, got me a live one. You know, and then they start saying, it's better that you leave here with kittens and puppies in your head instead of learning about Dr. Satan. And as they start talking about it, then all of a sudden you hear the clock go ding, ding. Then, you know, Grandpa's like, all right, ladies and germs, it's showtime! So it does this whole animation, and they go out to their barnyard, and they do like their normal Halloween routine, I guess, you know, where they do like a talent show and shit. This is one of the funniest parts of the film where Grandpa Hugo, he starts telling this joke, and he's like, eat your wife's pussy! I mean, jam your face in it! You know, and then that's when he does that, he keeps screaming on the mic, you know, and it's just, there's constant feedback. Quiet! You're gonna wake up Grandma! You know? Just like dirty ass jokes. Everybody was funny as hell. Then he's like, all right, gentlemen, we got a nice special treat for you, right? And as that's gonna happen, you see Baby, you know, she's fucking with one of the other cheerleaders, where, you know, she's like, give me a B, give me an A, give me a B, give me a Y. What does that spell? What's that spell? And the cheerleader's like, baby, you damn right. And so she's getting her makeup ready, and it shows that scene real quick, and it shows her coming out, and she starts singing the song, I Want to Be Loved by You. And so, you know, she's messing with everybody. And she goes to sit on Bill's lap, and then Bill's girlfriend gets all jealous. She's like, get off him, you fucking whore! You know, she pushes her down, and then they start kind of having a scuffle. She's like, what are you gonna do? She goes, I'll do something, bitch. She pulls out a knife. And as they were gonna scuffle, then all of a sudden, you know, Rufus comes in. He's like, car's done! So they jump in the car, and they said, we gotta get the fuck out of this place, you know? So as they're taking off, there's a gate right there, and Bill's like, no, we need to get out of the car and open the gate. And it's still raining. It's like, what the fuck are you guys doing? You know, so Bill goes over there and he tries to open the gate. Then you see all these scarecrows like sitting up. They jump down and they start beating the shit out of him. And then Jerry gets out. Another scarecrow comes out and they beat the shit out of him. Comes to find out, once they take off their mask, you find out that it's Otis and Tiny, right? So they pull them in. And then it shows that they break through in the car, and then they get the last girl, which is Bill's girlfriend, Mary. It was crazy how they did that whole scene. And it was just like, oh shit. And then it flashes in the morning, and then you see Rufus coming out. You know, he's getting his jacket on or whatever. He gets into his tow truck, starts it, and then he drives away with their car, which you see is all fucked up. Then it shows Mary, she's sitting in the corner, she wakes up, she starts screaming, she's gagged, and she's like, like she's wearing one of those dunce hats that looks like she's in trouble. And he's like, shut up, bitch, I'm trying to work. You know, and then she's still screaming. Then that's when he comes up. And basically, you know, he tells her, he calls her, he goes, listen here, you middle-class Malibu Barbie piece of shit. I'm trying to work here. Do you know what it's like to work? It's not about scooping up ice cream for your friends during the summer. There's no Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck on one side or the other. And then that's when, you know, he's like, I'm going to take this off. But if you scream, I'm going to gut you like a fucking pig. So he takes it off. And then, you know, she starts asking, well, where's Bill? He goes, oh, Bill? Oh, you know, he was a wonderful man. He helped me out. I really needed his help. I had a total block. Bill, he helped me out with this project. And then it shows the cutscenes of where, you know, Bill, he's tied onto this cross, and him and Baby, they come in. And it shows that, you know, they pull out all these random tools, a blade and a fucking, you know, hatchet. And then Baby, she turns on the radio and it starts playing fucking Brick House, of all things, right? Starts playing Brick House, and, you know, Baby's dancing, and so Otis, you know, he starts going crazy, and so that's when he starts chopping them all up and torturing them and shit. And then, you know, it goes back to the scene where he's talking to Mary. And Mary's like, please, let me see him. I just want to know if he's okay. Is he okay? He goes, yeah, he's more than okay. Let me introduce you to... Then he pulls back the curtains. Fish Boy! Then it shows how they chopped them all up and they made him look like a fucking mermaid. It was just like, holy shit, what the fuck? You know, and it was really intense how they did that, you know? And while that's going on, then all of a sudden you see Denise's dad. He wakes up in the morning and then he calls, you know, a sheriff out there in Rugsville. And he starts telling him, hey, just a heads up, man, like... my daughter said that she was going to be here. She stopped at some Spaulding place. And the guy's like, okay, yeah, I know. He goes, can you double check? I mean, it's just kind of odd for her to miss out like that, you know? And he's like, well, it was raining like a son of a bitch. Maybe they got lost out there. We'll see. So then he sends his deputies out there, which one of them is Deputy Wydell. You see him later on in the sequel, too. But anyways, you see, you know, Wydell and his other deputy, his partner. They go out to Captain Spaulding's place and they start talking to him. You know, he shows them the picture of the girls and he's like, well, not my style, you know, I like the big girls, you know. It's, I like for more cushion for the pushing, you know. Just like some stupid shit, like he's fucking with the cops. And the cops are like, who is she here with? Where does she go? He goes, I don't know. They came here with some nosy-ass kids asking about some Dr. Satan bullshit. And then he's like, well, where do they go? He goes, well, I gave him a map. Out there to the old farmhouse. I thought, you know, there ain't gonna be no harm, no foul, you know, and it's good for my tourist trade. And so that's when, you know, Wydell, he starts pulling him up. He goes, write that direction down for me. So he writes down the directions and stuff, right? And then it goes back to the house. You see Denise, she's all tied up onto a bed. Tiny comes down, he's still in his mask, and, you know, he's eating, it looks like dog food, but, you know, he's eating it like cereal. And then she's like, Tiny, please, will you let me go? Will you let me go? And he unties her, and she's like, thank you, Tiny. I'm just gonna go. And then, you know, that's when Otis comes around. Where the fuck you going, bitch? And he throws her in the cage and locks her up. And then he's looking at Tiny like, what? Then it goes back to the cops, right? And, you know, they're driving around. And all of a sudden they see this busted car. And they said, yep, it matches the description. So then they start searching for the car. And they have another tow truck come out and look for it. They look through and they see nothing. And then all of a sudden, that's when the main sheriff guy comes out. And he's like, well, what do you guys find? He goes, nothing. It's just a fucked up car. But we found some keys. He's like, just don't stand there like a broken dick dog. Open the trunk there, rookie. So they open the trunk and it ends up being one of the cheerleaders. And it says trick or treat like etched in on them. And then it shows like another cutscene of, you know, Otis where he's like, well, people come and go and they don't remember things. But I like to, you know, leave something there so that they remember. Don't you like what you see? Don't you like what you see? You know, they show all that whole aspect. Then it goes back to Jerry, what happened to him. He's all tied up and, you know, Baby, she opens the door and she's like, hey. And he's like, where the fuck are my friends? She's like, well, I'm not going to tell you. You need to ask me this question. And then he's like, what? I'm not going to ask you shit. You know, she starts cutting his hair and he's getting all pissed off. And then all of a sudden she's like, tell me, who's my favorite actor? And he's like, Marilyn Monroe. And she goes, nope, you're fucked. And so she pulls his hair and then she's like scalping him, right? Then it goes back and it follows the Deputy Wydell and his partner, right? They're sitting there, they're having, you know, a Coca-Cola and they're waiting on this guy. And all of a sudden this guy that pulls up ends up being Denise's dad. And then you find out that Denise's dad was a former cop. And they said, okay, well, we got some leads to this farmhouse. We're going to go check it out. As they're driving out there to go check it out, then it shows the dialogue between Otis and Hugo where they're watching the Munsters. And he goes like, man, get my ass in that car. I'll show him how to drive that. And then Otis is like, you fat fuck, you couldn't even get in that car. And they start, kind of scuffling. He's like, don't start with me, Hugo. And then that's when Mama Firefly comes in and she goes, there's a fucking pigs in here. And he's like, shit, fuck. He starts loading up the gun. Take this, play nice. I'll go handle everything else like I always do. And you see Hugo flipping him off. And, that's when, the sheriff deputies, they get there and they split up. So Wydell goes to knock on the door. And then you see his partner and Denise's dad, they're walking around the place, right? They start seeing all this weird shit. And then, his partner starts to freak out because he sees a dog. And he's like, yeah, I'm afraid of dogs. They almost bit off my pinky toe and everything. And then they start hearing screams in this barn, so they break open the barn. And then it starts playing this weird song. What was it? I Remember You, right? And they start playing this country song in the background. And so they're all kind of like freaking out, like, oh shit. Denise's dad, he's just like all shocked. And then all of a sudden it's all in slow motion. And then they start calling on the walkie, Wydell, over, Wydell. And then, he turns away, talking to Mama Firefly like this. She pulls out the fucking revolver, blows his fucking head off, right? And then all of a sudden, that's when they start freaking out. Then Otis comes around, he shoots Denise's dad. And all of a sudden, he sees the deputy. The deputy gets down on his knees. And there's this long shot where he's sitting on his knees and he has the gun pointed to his face. And all of a sudden, boom, he fucking blows his brains out. That was a trip on that scene. But I thought what was crazy is the fact that Rob Zombie, he's came out in interviews and said, yeah, I killed Saving Private Ryan. Because Denise's dad, he played in that film. But also, too, there's kind of a little wink to that, right? It was the fact that not only did Denise's dad play in that movie Saving Private Ryan, but, he also, was a World War II vet. Like, he played a World War II vet. And they implied that Otis was a Vietnam vet, right? And the way that he gunned him down, he used a 1911. So, there's a lot of military winks in there to this. And I was just like, oh, shit, And I thought, oh, shit, you would never expected that from Rob Zombie, Just kind of interesting how he did that, how there's a little wink between, World War II and Vietnam vets and stuff like that, They imply that Otis was a Vietnam vet because of how he was wearing the shirt that says burn this flag, and he had all that whole aspect of it going on during the whole Vietnam War. There was crazy times in that time. So after all that had went down, now it's Halloween night. You see Otis, he's, skinning Denise's dad, for the chest and the face. Then he starts wearing it and everything. They're all dressed up in like bunny outfits and shit, hanging. And all of a sudden, that's when you see Otis come down. I'm the one who spoils you with candy. Who's your daddy? Right? And then he starts saying this other quote. I'm the one who disciplines you. Who's your dad? Like random stuff like that, right? And then that's when he goes and sees Denise, and that's when he's like, all right, give me some sugar. And then she's like, Daddy, because she's all out of it. And all of a sudden, that's when he says, I'll be the one who loves you. Even when you're fucking dead. And he pulls it back. And she sees that, he's wearing like the skin of her dad. And then, that's when he's flipping him around. He sees Jerry. He goes, oh, what's that shit that you wanted to know about? Oh, Dr. Satan? I'll let you meet the old bastard. And then that's when he takes off the mask. And he's like, it's all true. The boogeyman is real. And you found him. And so now they get all like geared up and they go out to the cemetery out in their farmland, right? And as they're doing that, they start loading them up in their grave, right? And then that's when you see Mary like flipping the fuck out, and then she takes off. And then Jerry's like, please, you don't have to do this. You don't have to do this. Then Rufus, he picks him up. Come on, you motherfucker, get in there. And he throws him in the fucking casket. And then Baby's like, no, don't shoot her. I want to chase this bitch. So Baby chases her, and they start this whole aspect of the run, rabbit, run. And they start saying, well, scared humans, they're just like rabbits. Run, rabbit, run! Baby starts singing this poem, and then finally she tackles her down. And, she sees Mary, and Mary's trying to fight her off and everything. She gets this knife and stabs the fuck out of her and keeps stabbing her. And then that's when, she looks at her and she goes, shoo, shoo, said the rabbit. She starts doing that high-pitched laugh. And then that's when they kind of dragged her back to, where they were going to continue their ritual. And, once they got everything going, they put Denise and they put Jerry in the casket and they started lowering them, right? And then they lowered him down with this lantern and this tape recorder where it says, bury me in a nameless grave. And it keeps saying it over and over. And I guess that's their chant to kind of bust out like Dr. Satan. And as they're being lowered down, all of a sudden, she's trying to wake up Jerry, and Jerry's all out of it too, That's when you see these weird fucking zombies. They tear apart this fucking casket and they take Jerry. And she gets away. And so she's running down the cave. She sees that there's other people that they fucked with. And they strip her down of her fucking, rabbit suit. And so now she's in her regular doll outfit, right? And as she's running all around, she sees all this weird shit. They're continuing their Halloween tradition where they put Mary's body up like on a grave, and then they light her on fire, and they're all just standing there just laughing, right? And now the whole story kind of follows Denise's character, where she's running through. And so Denise is going around, and she finally breaks open these doors, and she finally fucking sees Dr. Satan. And it has this climax of it, you know, where he's like held up by arms and shit because he was hanging and everything. And then he's working on Jerry, and you see Jerry's all fucking dead, and, you know, his head split open and everything. She's like, oh no, Jerry! And then I guess he has his assistant, this other professor, coming after her, chasing after her. And it kind of reminds me of like fucking Wolfenstein, the video game, you know? And so he's chasing around, you know, through these mines, and then all of a sudden, you know, he sees her, then he like takes off his mask trying to breathe, and he's like spitting out all this goop, and then he tries to use his axe to try to hit her. And then the whole fucking cave caves in, right? And as that happens, you know, she wakes up, sees he's still knocked out, she climbs out, and she's walking down the road. And all of a sudden you see Captain Spaulding driving around in his pink caddy. And then all of a sudden, you know, he picks her up and he's like, sweet baby Jesus, what the hell happened to you, girl? She goes, I got away. And he goes, all right. What do you want me to do? And she's like, take me to the doctor. And he's like, all right, I'll take you to the doctor there, darling. Don't worry. And as he's driving, all of a sudden Otis pops up from the back part of the seat. You know, he raises an axe, and then it looks like he's going to hit her. And then all of a sudden you hear like these, you know, these drilling sounds, and she's tied up to like Dr. Satan's table, like looking around, and then all of a sudden she sees Dr. Satan's face, and then, you know, the professor that was chasing after her, and she starts screaming, ah, 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 and then the fucking film ends, and it says, the end, ? It's like, oh shit. You know, they left it open-ended, and it's just like, you don't expect that, like, holy shit. But it was an interesting take on how they did that, you know, and how they filmed so many different various scenes. Rob Zombie himself said that the ending was kind of lackluster, and so he filmed like 4 or 5 different endings of this film. And with that being said, you know, there's this one ending where they actually kidnap Dr. Satan, and Rosie O'Dawson, she plays in this film for a cameo role. She goes in there as a nurse to go check on him, and I guess he rips out her neck or something. You know, they played with different endings and stuff like that, and Rob Zombie himself came out and said, well, we shot various different scenes, and we did that purposely because we didn't know if Universal was going to agree to it like being gory, or they wanted no gore. So he shot like so many different scenes, and that's what kind of, you know, I guess you could say kind of hindered this film a little bit. When this film first came out, a lot of people, they had mixed reactions to it because they didn't know how to perceive it, how to take it. It was one of those films that if it was released in 2000, you know, right when they were going to release it originally, I think it would have done better in theaters. But because of the fact of, you know, how they shelved it and how Rob Zombie had to go through all this loopholes to try to buy the rights and get it, you know, out there, it just, by 2003, a lot of people were just like, you know, because Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the remake, was already coming out too, you know, and so a lot of people thought, okay, this is Rob Zombie's take on Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which it really wasn't, you know. There was some stuff that inspired by it, yes, but it's not really Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Had a different story to it. It was more, I guess you could say, animated in a way, you know. It was more kind of kooky. Then it just, you know, Rob Zombie himself said that when he wrote everything out, he didn't think that it would have like this dark humor to it. And once he started noticing that there was dark humor to it, that's when he started to change the editing and kind of make it his own take to it. And for what he did, I mean, it was amazing. You know, for a first film, you know, he wrote and directed the whole film himself, and then he had his hands on editing it, right? And when it came out in theaters, it was just more or less like, you know, but when it was released on DVD, everybody knew about it. And everybody, you know, they loved the character of Captain Spaulding. And Captain Spaulding was one of those characters that a lot of people thought that, you know, is he involved in it? Is he not involved in it? He's very kooky like them, but, you know, and then later on when Rob Zombie did, you know, the sequel, Devil's Rejects, by the way, that's when you found out that Captain Spaulding was a part of it. And that's when you find out all the different things about each Firefly member. For an example, like Otis. Otis in this film, he's supposed to play albino, right? That's why his eyes are red in most of the scenes, and he has white hair and he's very light-skinned complected. Well, they kind of abandoned that idea when it became Devil's Rejects because they didn't want it too kooky and animated, and Rob Zombie kind of wanted to distance himself away from the original tale of it. When it became such a big thing and they wanted to do the sequel, you know, Lionsgate, they said, okay, we'll do a sequel, just don't make it as kooky as you originally had intended it to be. And so Rob Zombie, that's when he kind of went a different route with Devil's Rejects. But for Devil's Rejects, what it was, I mean, it was great. I mean, you still had some of the kookiness, but not a whole lot. House of a Thousand Corpses, to me, whenever it's Halloween, I always have to watch this film because it takes place on Halloween Eve and Halloween night, right? And so that makes it fun. And who doesn't love the character of Dr. Satan? You know, I'm a medical nerd myself, so I mean, when they had the character of Dr. Satan, I was like, oh shit, okay, this is really cool. But hope you're enjoying your Halloween and you're all not eating too much candy and watching too many scary horror films. Ooh. But anyways, guys, thank you all for tuning in, and I will catch you all next time, as always.